Well, I will say, Happy Easter. Why would I say that? Well, because we think of rabbits delivering Easter eggs, which is a bit incongruous. It's funny. Humor is incongruous. It's based on things that don't jive, make them jive. So I will tell you the beginning of a funny, happy joke. A rabbit went into a bar one day and climbed up on the stool and said to the bartender, "You got any grapes?" Well, that's the beginning. It's not real funny yet, though the incongruity is there. What's the difference between a joke and a story? A joke is about the teller or about the rabbit, but mainly it's a revelation of the one who's telling the joke. It's about me if I tell you a joke. You say, "Boy, you are funny." A story, however, let's talk about that. Today we are celebrating the end of a long series of jokes in which Jesus tells stories about this and about that. A man finds a stone or pearl, goes fishing. All these, they're kind of jokes. They're all about Jesus, which is a good thing. And we get the punchline. And we say, and people who saw the miracles, they did what we would do after I tell you a joke. You'd say, "Do you have any others? Can you tell more jokes?" So the people wanted to see little signs, little miracles that revealed the teller, Jesus. So let's call them jokes. They were incongruous, that a human being could cure, that a human being could multiply stones or more bread into more bread, water into wine. Those are little jokes. It's incongruous that these things happen. We are celebrating the resurrection today, in which story jokes, or just jokes, end. No more jokes. Now the story begins. And the story is not about the storyteller. The story ends with the resurrection. The story begins with the resurrection, which is incongruous. It's a bit humorous. It's a miracle. But we don't laugh at it, but it's joyful. But what's the story? In the first reading today, Paul, in the Acts of the Apostles, says, Jesus went around doing good. Just doing good things. As we say, little jokes. In a broad sense of jokes. But the story begins with his rising and entering the lives of others. And we will see Jesus rising into the lives of others. So that's not a joke, because, as we will see, the story is how Jesus lives within the lives of the people for whom and to whom he rose. And how he calls people out of their tombs. That's not a joke. That's a real beginning of a story that goes on and on and on. The story of people rising out of their tombs of depression, rising out of their tomb of addiction, of regret. Jesus rose to tell people, going around telling people, no, your story isn't ended, it's just beginning. your sadness, your guilt, your shame. It's not funny. It's dead personally serious. Your story is beginning. And what is the story? It's how Jesus continues doing the good through us. So he untombs us, that we might go around doing good, in a way untombing others. We have that power. That's the story of how he continues working through us. He tells us his resurrection story today and says, now you rise too. It's a bit like, little by little, we're recovering from the pandemic. And we say, what's going to be the new normal? What's going to be like after everyone is vaccinated or recovered? What's that going to be like? In Jesus' resurrection, there is no new normal. It's new, and it's not normal for human beings to be able to reveal the goodness of God. That's not normal. That's not a joke. That's our story. That's his story lived in us. And we don't know the next chapter. But we do know the final ending. His resurrection is the promise of our resurrection. The story then changes at our death, but doesn't end. Just like his story. We enter his story, and his story enters us. That's not a joke. And we take our lives very seriously and personally. Not seriously in the same sense as sad, but joyful because he works through us. He continues going about doing good through us. That's his story in our story. Now, I suppose you want me to tell you the rest of that joke about the bunny, and there is a rest of that joke, that the bunny says, "You got any grapes?" Bartender said, "No, we don't have any grapes. Get out of here." So the bunny hops down, comes back the next day, climbs up on the stool, says, "Got any grapes?" The bartender said, "I told you yesterday. No, we don't have grapes. Get out of here. If you come back here again, I'm going to nail those flabby feet of yours to the bar stool." Comes back the next day, climbs up on the stool. "Got any grapes?" The bartender says, "No, we don't have any grapes." And the rabbit says, "Got any nails?" It's a bunny story. It's an Easter story. But it's just a joke because we don't know what happened to the bunny or the bartender. And we don't know how we're going to live the rest of his story in our story. We don't know. The joy is he goes with us. He has risen into us. And we go about not as a joke, but as a loving story, extending his life, risen life, in the lives around us, rising them, that they might live his story in them. It's how we are church, and it's how this is a happy Easter.